my name is Roxanne, calling from Germantown, North Carolina. My question is, how do you deal with racism at a Christian church? Thank you.
Roxanne, thank you so much for calling in with what really is such an important question. And Stephen, whatever Roxanne's facing in her church, it's not new.
No, it isn't. I think the short answer to you, Roxanne, is there is no place in the church for racism, period. And you may need to find another church. It's a heart problem, not a theological problem. It's an issue that is universal. I think in America we tend to think of the black-white issue. But I know living in my community here, there's intense prejudice between the Mexicans and the Puerto Ricans. I pastor a church of many languages, and there is a prejudice, a hostility that is years old, generations old, between the Japanese and the Chinese, between the Taiwanese and the Chinese, between the Indian and the Pakistani. There are prejudices right now, deep prejudices in Africa between tribes, and killing in the name of ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing is murder based upon prejudice. So it's an issue that reveals the evil of man's heart. Well, the Apostle Paul makes it really clear. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free man, neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. And if you belong to Christ, then you're Abraham's descendant. He's not telling us there's no such thing in the church as a slave or free man or women and men. He's not telling us that we're all the same in essence or makeup. He's telling us we're all the same as it relates to the gospel and our equality in the family of God. That slave in the early church was just as important to God as the free man. The woman was just as important as man. In fact, friends, if you go to other countries in our world today that deny the gospel, what's their view of women? Go to India. And the horror of the untouchable class and the poverty that I've witnessed with my eyes. Why? Because they belong to a different class of people, and the prejudice that comes out of that is really, really tragic. So, but here in America, and I know, Roxanne, this is what you're probably talking about, we've got the issue of the black and the white issue. Let's just keep in mind we're all descendants of one couple, Adam and Eve. So we are all brothers. Genetically, we're all related. The only difference is the level of melatonin, right? Scott, we were talking about this a little earlier, the pigmentation of skin. This is only skin deep. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. I once saw a speaker talking on this topic, and he held up a piece of paper, a black piece of paper and a white piece of paper, and he just made the point that none of us look like either of these, right? There's nobody who is truly black, and there's nobody who's truly white. We're all a range in the middle. Yeah. We have that melatonin in our skin.
That's right, and that's the way God created Adam and Eve. You know, they're often shown as fair-skinned, blonde-headed, very European, which is inaccurate based on where they were created and the potential within that genetic code for variety. They were probably darker skinned, or what we would call middle brown, but God created them with the ability, or the potential, I should say, genetically, for incredible variety.
And so the same is true. What you're saying then is that with Adam and Eve, every variation that we see in the human race with hair color, eye color, skin color, all of it was present there in Adam and Eve.
We have a problem, frankly, and the problem is we don't like people who aren't like us. That's the problem. We don't like people who aren't like us. And it starts, showing itself in middle school, right? You got a middle school girl, who's she going to hang around? People who are like her. That's what we call a clique. And you as a parent are constantly trying to get her to open her arms to people who are different from her. And we grow up and we disassociate from people based on economic standard and educational standard and physical attributes. And all of that reflects the heart of sin. We're just sinners. And racism, anti-Semitism is another example. Explain the hatred of people for the Jews. Evil, sin, and the father of lies, the devil. So for that white person who doesn't like that black person, guess what the issue is? It's sin. So what they need is not a change in skin color. They need a change in heart attitude. And that's where God takes us as we join the church and we look around the church at all the people that are different. This is what Paul is talking about when he says there is one body, one hope of your calling. You're one family, and you reflect the grace of God by loving people who are a little different from you. So, Scott, if we wrap this up for Roxanne and we just come around to it, what we're basically saying is the church ought to eradicate racism within the community of believers there and be a testimony and example to the world outside the church of what it means to love each other and get along no matter what that level of brown or white is, right?